Welcome to the All Ambient podcast, where we dig into the creative process, hear untold stories, and explore the brilliant minds behind some of the finest ambient music out there. I'm your host, Mike Graff. I'm excited to be in this together with you. Let's get going. Again, welcome to the All Ambient podcast, everyone. My name is Mike Graff, and I make music as Dear Gravity. It is genuinely incredible to get to do this and be here together with you. I am really excited for you to get the chance to hear from Andrew Land today. Before we dig into that conversation, I want to say a huge thank you to All Ambient. That's all-ambient.com. What an incredible music licensing site for all things ambient and cinematic music. If you are a creator and you are tired of digging through catalogs that have a bunch of music that might not be the best fit for your project, for any project, All Ambient is absolutely the perfect licensing site for you. Every song that's on All Ambient has been expertly curated. There is nothing on the site that doesn't feel great. And even better is that there are curated song bundles that are all designed around an individual theme or feel that can fit your film, video, your project perfectly. It's absolutely a great solution to your music licensing needs. Go check it out at all-ambient.com. That's all-ambient.com. And if you use the promo code podcast25, you will save 25% on your order. That is a huge savings on an already great deal for some incredible music. And fun fact, when you license your music on a site like All Ambient, you can know that you are directly supporting the artists and allowing them to continue to make more and more music in the way that they do, so that you can continue to make great projects in the very way that you do. What a cool thing. Go check it out at all-ambient.com. My guest today is none other than Andrew Land, who makes music as Bailrigg. Andrew is a prolific artist. I appreciate Andrew's heart and commitment. He is a great guy. It was really fun to connect with someone who has such a refreshing take on the world of music creation. So glad we got the chance to sit down and have this conversation. Without any further ado, I give you Andrew Land of Bailrigg. Well, today, folks, I have the distinct pleasure of getting to connect with someone who is prolific within the last few years, not just with his main moniker, Andrew Land, but also Bailrigg, which we get to talk a little bit more about, and a bunch more that I'm sure we're going to get to crack wide open. I love what this guy does. I'm really excited we get to be here together. Andrew Land, welcome to the All Ambient podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me.
It's just so great to be together, man. It really is.
Absolutely.
And you're coming to us from the UK, yes?
Yes, yeah, from Sutton Coldfield, North Birmingham in the Midlands in UK.
Amazing. And I think, as we talked a little bit beforehand, we have kind of the similar wintry weather that's happening right now, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
Tis the season.
Frosty, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Andy, and thank you. I love that I get to call you Andy. It feels like we're old friends already.
Yeah, I like it.
But even just in a little bit of the talk before we started rolling, I know that this is going to be a great conversation. I'm already really encouraged by your heart and by not just what you're releasing and the creativity behind that, but also just your mindset and your approach to all that. So we're going to dig into some great stuff today. But I would love to start at the beginning with you and whatever that looks like, whether that's just a few years ago or a few decades ago. I'd love to explore what it looked like for you to begin to inch your way into music. How'd you get started in music? Was it an early on thing? Did it grow throughout the course of time? Because the last time I checked, at least on the Andrew Land moniker, the discography goes back. There are so many releases and they're all just so great, but looks like it goes back to about 2020 or so. So you've got a whole bunch of years that you get to fill us all in on what that journey looked like. And I can't wait to hear about it.
Yeah. So for me, music's a thing that's been, in my life from age 7.
Yeah. Love it.
So school, I started playing the trumpet. I'm from Yorkshire, which is the north of England, for anyone who doesn't know. If you live in Yorkshire, you live, and certainly the bit of Yorkshire I lived in, you live in around a lot of mining or former mining areas, and that brings a lot of brass bands and colliery bands. And so I was a trumpet cornet player from the age of 7 to 18, did all of the grades and all the exams and all that sort of stuff, and I did that a lot. And then sort of learned piano kind of alongside that. But I remember moving down here to where I live now in the Midlands, and then somebody saying I did music, and somebody saying, what orchestras were you in? And I was like, it wasn't any of the orchestras. And then I realised, oh no, you don't have time for orchestras because you spend your life in brass bands, playing brass band competitions, and which is very serious.
Right.
And it's really funny because I don't know if you know, I don't know if you guys were aware of how big she's about Hannah Peel. So Hannah Peel's pretty big over here, was nominated for the Mercury Prize and stuff at Reset last year.
Yeah.
But I was recently heard on a podcast, and her upbringing, she's from round the corner from where I'm from, and her upbringing is exactly the same. Nothing but brass bands, trumpets, cornets, and it's really serious as well. So that was kind of like, that was the thing, and it was just, I did music, and then every opportunity inside and outside of school, it's just kind of what I did. And then I sort of hit as the teens, I had my own passion for music and for the music I wanted to listen to. And I was, my teens is kind of the 90s, the mid 90s. And so I was a Britpop kid.
I'm there with you, man. It's okay for us to date ourselves. It's all good.
Oh, that's good, man. I'm glad I got a friend. Someone else who feels my pains. Yeah. So I was a Britpop kid in the 90s. So I was big Oasis fan in particular. And also then everything that leads you to, which that naturally leads you into the 60s and Beatles and all that, the Stones and everything. So, and I taught myself to play the guitar kind of around about the same time. And so I got to 18 and I think I was a bit burnt out, to be honest with you. I wanted to basically smoke and drink a lot more, was the long short of it when I went to uni. So I played in bands and stuff at uni, but didn't really do anything seriously. And then kind of left uni and got on with getting a proper job in inverted commas and a life and a career and things. And so it just kind of became a thing that was just there in the background, playing a guitar if I had 5 minutes free, nothing serious. And then, I got a job and a career and a life and a family, and I got married and I now have 2 children, and
amazing. Congrats.
Busy career that took up a lot of time and still does. And so really that was that until COVID. When COVID came and we were all sent home and none of us could go out and none of us could have social lives. And more importantly, my kids couldn't have social lives. That freed up a ton of time for me where I had nothing to do. Work wasn't as busy because of COVID. We couldn't do anything fun. We couldn't go anywhere. And so I just sort of thought, out of boredom almost one day, I wonder if I could get some software or something. And that software ultimately ended up being Ableton. And then from there, I thought, and I sort of played around with it and I realized I could do some stuff. And then it was just over the course of those few months when we were all in lockdown in 2020, it was a course of just developing that, playing around with it, getting the things, understanding how it worked, understanding what I could do with it. And then quickly led to, by the kind of towards the back end of the year, a bunch of tracks, which became an album, which one I just thought, why not? Let's go for it. Let's stick it out there and see if anybody likes it. And some people did, not loads. Some people did. And
absolutely.
And you know what? Would I make that album again? Probably not. I'd like to think I've learned a lot more since then, and I've got a lot more kits certainly since then, because you get a bit of gear acquisition syndrome in between.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and so I kind of, it led me to just go for it and see what happened. And initially, it was a bit of a secret squirrel kind of doing in the background, maybe just got a job, and it was kind of, I was busy, and so it was just kind of, I didn't really want it to be a big thing. And then I think initially, I don't know what you were like, Mike, when you started, but initially when I put that stuff out and you think, I don't know what you think is going to happen in your head, whether you think either one or two things is going to happen, nobody's going to listen to it, or you're going to be discovered overnight and that's it. This is it. This is life now. And in reality, kind of know that neither of those things happens. What happens is a few people listen to it, and stuff, and you realize things you did wrong and ways to release it that you need to think about, and doing things differently. And so I just thought, I could do that better or different. And so that was the thing then, let's go for it. And that was a kind of a sort of a watershed decision. And in the end, with that album, I did release the first few singles and things myself. And then I got in touch with a label who said, we're up for releasing this. And that was Collaborative Records, a small label based over here in the UK. And they said, and I thought, maybe this is all right then. If somebody likes it, somebody's willing to release it, maybe it's not that bad. And I'd kind of got quite down about it, I think, because the first two singles hadn't really done anything. And you realize then that you have to make it do something. You know, it doesn't just, I thought in my head, once it's out there, it's out there. People will find it. It will just,
if you build it, they will come.
Exactly that. Exactly that. It will land on their doorsteps and they will bump into it and they will go, oh, yes, brilliant. Oh, that's what I've been looking for my entire life, you know?
Yeah.
And in reality, you know, what you realize is that the same thing that allows you to just do that and put that out there and get it out there to the world also allows everybody else to do that. And so you're in this very crowded market where actually, you know, you're not just going to put out a couple of songs and people are going to go, yeah, this guy's great. We've discovered him. He's our thing. And that's that. And you're an overnight success. Don't think overnight successes are possibly even a thing anymore.
Right.
You have to then realize, I've got to work at this. I'm going to do this. I've got to really, really do this.
Yeah.
And I've got to work at it and I've got to build a community around this almost and try and find people. I've got to go out there and tell people, I do this thing, you might like it, you know, and this is how you can find it amidst the millions of other people who are also doing this thing and losing stuff all the time, you know. So I took that decision to kind of put a bit more effort into that side of things, I guess.
Yeah, well, and I mean, clearly it's paid off. Like you look at the traction that you have on multiple projects, and those are things that genuinely don't happen to, you know, the vast majority of people who are, because like what you said, I mean, what was the last number that I heard? It was like 70,000 tracks a day that are released on DSPs, you know, on all platforms, which is a wild number.
Yeah.
And it's also scary in the sense of like, well, how is my meager, not meager in the sense of like it's not a well-crafted, you know, piece of art, but meager in the sense of like,
in size.
how it's way like just a grain of sand in a sea of
drop in the ocean.
How does it cut through? And yet, like you said, I mean, you know, for there to be some label support there, for you to really even more so to take that step of faith, of courage, and be like, okay, folks, I'm here, and being willing to almost broadcast that a little bit, not in like a shameless self-promoting, like, hey, this is all I do, and you know, your personal social media all of a sudden looks an awful lot like you just trying to get everybody to listen to your new thing or whatever. Like it's not that, but much more so just being really proud of what you're releasing and for an intentional day in, day out effort in that land to begin to reap the results that are happening. I think it's a great testament to not only how great your stuff is, but how, that you're willing to take that courageous step and cut through the fluff a little bit. It's great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, thank you very much. I mean, it's really hard to strike that balance on social media and stuff, as you just mentioned there, of trying to say to people, I do this thing and you might like it, because you've got to decide when you're making this stuff. Ultimately, at some point, you have to make that decision. Am I making this for me, or am I making this for other people, or both? Mm-hmm. You know, and if you want other people to hear it, you do ultimately get to the point where you have to tell them about it.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of say, and it is hard, and I find it is hard striking that balance between saying to people, I do this thing, and not being the, I do this thing and it's awesome kind of show off guy, you know, is, you know, don't get me wrong, that isn't me. And I couldn't pull that off at the start. Yeah. But I wouldn't know where to begin. But it wouldn't be genuine, and it would come across as cringe. You know, you just got to be, you've got to be you is the start, you know, the first thing, and it's got to be genuine. Otherwise people see straight through it. It's not genuine.
Absolutely.
And you kind of have to somehow trying to balance between telling people you do it so that they know it's there, so that there's the possibility they can go and listen to it and they'll find you, because nobody else is bluntly going to do that for you. You have to make that first move if you want people to listen to it. And then not being the show-off guy, you know, and kind of also being aware. But what I've found is that I think if you are yourself, people, you know, not everyone's going to love you, because no one's going to love your music, no one's going to love you as a person. But that's just, you know, life in a nutshell.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, you can't get on with everybody, and you don't have to get on with everybody, and you don't have to have everybody love your stuff, and you don't have to be, you know, you don't have to be Taylor Swift, as nice as that would be for everybody who's not Taylor Swift. But you know, you don't have to be Taylor Swift. But what you just have to get something out of it. And I think as a musician, you've got two things you want really. You know, you want people to listen to your stuff and you want them to connect with it, you know, and you want them to get the emotions, I guess, and the feelings that you want to put across and that maybe you felt when you made it or that inspired you to make it or whatever it is. But also, you know, people have bills to pay and people need to eat food and put out roofs over their houses, roofs over their heads and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, so, and there's this thing at the minute, I think, where it seems to be like dirty for musicians to want to make a living. Like the art is supposed to be enough. And you're like, yeah, it's great, but I can't eat it. You know,
yeah.
You know, and it's, I'm in a different position because, and this is kind of to that point, you know, I have a full-time day job, you know, and so that is what I'm lucky in the sense of that is what pays my bills. But the reason that is what pays my bills, that isn't music, is because music can't pay my bills, because the thing that makes it so easy for me to release that music is the thing that also means that I don't get paid that much money for it, you know, and so it's kind of, you know, a lot of musicians are in a position where they do need to make that money, you know, and I'd love for it to be my, you know, my source of income and my job and all that sort of stuff. But that isn't the reality of for most people, you know, and so you have to, certainly in the short term, you know, you can build and build and build that, you know, and a lot of that is just consistently putting out music and putting out good music. But also it's about creating this network of people who, you know, you've kind of exposed your music to, find it and who go, yeah, I like that, you know, I'll come back for more. Yeah. And so it's one of the best things I've found about doing this, actually, to be honest, is the people I've met along the way, other musicians, people who've been in touch to say they've heard my stuff and they like it, you know, that's actually the community you end up involved in without, and that is not what I thought would happen. I didn't think I'd end up meeting all these people, some in person, some, you know, a lot over social media and stuff, some like we are today, you know, on calls and stuff.
Absolutely. Yep.
That is one of the best things actually that's come out of it, is that you meet and they're all just nearly always nice, you know.
Yeah.
And they're all kind of very often in the same boat.
I'm putting on my best face for you, man. I'm putting on my best face.
They're all kind of sort of in the same boat that you are generally. You've got a lot in common with them, you know, in the sense of they kind of are in that same sort of struggle, you know, and then you meet somebody who's doing something and you go, what they're doing is a really good idea. That works. I like that, you know, and people talk to you about different things you could be doing and you learn so much along the way.
Yeah.
And it's just from the community that you build, but that you have to go and look for that community and you have to go and find it and become part of it.
It's
and that's
true.
the bit I never thought I'd spend so much time doing, if I'm honest. When I first sat down with Ableton, you know.
I'm really glad that you said that. I mean, I think there's something really valuable to, like you said, to the community and to being able to connect with other people, not just for the sake of, quote, like networking, like as though, you know, the whole idea is just this, you know, how does this further my own career?
Yeah, what can I get out of this? Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's so much more. So like I learn so much from everybody that I get to connect with, and I'm just deeply encouraged by that. And also, like, you know, sometimes you just need someone else to give you a little bit of a swift kick in the pants, right? Where there's, I can start believing some things that aren't true if I'm just, you know, down here by myself in my studio. There are things that I can convince myself are not real, in the sense of, oh, this release it's just not my best work, or, you know, I don't know why I said yes to this, or man, I feel like I'm putting in so much effort and nothing's coming out of it. Like sometimes it takes a little bit of a perspective shift, and that can come from hearing somebody else's win, you know, for them to have something that lands well, or it can come from somebody else, you know, encouraging and saying, hey, I love what you're up to. I know you're in the slump of the release right now, but keep pushing through because it's going to be worth it. And not to go off on a whole tangent, but, you know, you're quite prolific, Andy. You're putting out so much stuff all the time. And I want to dig in a little bit more about your mindset behind that and just your pace of releasing and everything. But I am recently, there's been some really nice surprises, if you will, with some of the Dear Gravity releases and what lanes they've been picked up in and the traction that, you know, hadn't seen before in, you know, on various DSPs and whatnot. And truthfully, like it's deeply encouraging. It's like, wow, that's great. But it's also so humbling in the sense that I never would have guessed that like that particular song was going to do a thing over there. And it may have even been one of the songs that I was kind of up in my head about in the studio and just like, I don't know about this or what. Just, there's that internal dialogue that I needed, some community to just come around me and encourage me and say, hey, it's time for you to release it. And so with that, it's worth it to get out of our head and to release to the world and to say, this is my offering, this is my art. And I guarantee you, man, it's going to continue to grow. I see your commitment to it, and I have no doubt that it's going to continue to grow for sure. Yep.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Yep,
yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, to that point you made about like predicting how a song was going to do, I have almost 100% failure rate in that, because the song I think, if I've got just songs, an album or an EP or whatever, and the one I think, that's the good one. If anyone's going to like anything, it's going to be that one. It's never that one.
Sure.
It's never ever that one.
Of course
it's never.
It's not.
It's the great example of that is this past year. I just one night picked up my guitar and made a little guitar track. Had a little bit of ambient piano in the background, and recorded it, and that was that. And then Mare Nostrum were doing a compilation, their Dive In compilation, and Alex is a guy I've got to know quite well and have worked with and stuff, who's at Mare Nostrum, who's the Code, and he's a great guy. And, I just sort of sent it across and went, I made this, do you want it? And he went, well, we've never really released a sort of guitar-based track before, but why not? Stuck it on there, and it's been my most streamed track this past year by some considerable distance. Spotify picked it up, stuck it on a playlist where it's been nearly all year.
Right.
And I just would never have, the thing I took away from that is should probably pick up the guitar a little more often. I'm sitting banging away the piano, like an idiot, when I should be, I should have a guitar in my hand. But it just completely took me by surprise. And that is just one of those things. I didn't give it as a throwaway thing, but it was just this track that was on its own, didn't fit anywhere else, anything else I'd done, and think, release the compilation's perfect for something like that, and if it doesn't do that well, okay, it goes onto that compilation and it's part of something else, and that's a little package and it fits in there, and that's its thing, and that'll be that. And I just expected it to be almost nothing, and then here we are, and I just would never have picked that. And then tracks where I think, this one's great. I'm really pleased with how this one's come out. I think it'll go down well. And then you just look at it just does nothing. You just think,
or it just blends in with everything else. Yeah.
And maybe that's it. Maybe, maybe what I'm saying is when I think that was the real advice, because it sounds like so much other stuff. And that's stuff that I like. And that's why it's not cutting through for whatever reason. And that's where, the takeaway there probably really is, he's always think differently. So think outside the box, think about how can you be different, not how can you be the same,
Sure. Well, I'm with you there. Yes. And there can be a recurring theme among talking with other composers, artists, producers, where there's this balance of exactly what you said, where interesting that this thing took off that I wasn't expecting it to. And then these other things that I adore are just seemingly lower traction or whatnot. But man, there has to be something, Andy, to the value of that song that you adore, right? Like for us to, don't get me wrong, how cool is it when that Venn diagram overlaps almost entirely, where you're creating something that you adore that everyone else responds to in that same way, and that it becomes, that there's a lot of traction, which is great. And I'm not saying that we ever create things that we don't approve of that, other people happen to really like. I mean, we of course like all of our work, but there is something there has to be something. I'm just curious what you think of it, just in the sense of me working on a song that I am so satisfied with that I'm able to almost separate myself from what it winds up doing. I don't like the word commercially, but what it winds up doing in the space of being consumed by other people versus how much that song just needed to be released by me. As an artist, that had to be part of what I offered to the world. I think there has to be place for that, for us to feel satisfied as a human being at the end of our run, right?
Totally. Yeah. And it goes back to what we were saying before about, when you're making music, what you're making it for. Are you making it for you, or are you making it for other people? Right. And I probably both. But even if other people don't, the safety net there is even if other people aren't that interested. If you made it for you in the first instance, then you got something out of it and there was a purpose to it, and it served a purpose and it fulfilled a need and allowed you, because at the end of the day, what you do when you're making music, you're expressing yourself, aren't you, effectively? So you obviously needed to express yourself in that way, and you obviously needed to do that, unless you're just, and that's when you fall into the trap of, if you're trying to make stuff to fit, a certain mode or a certain play, if you try to write stuff for playlists or whatever, that's when you end up making stuff that you don't connect with, and that's where, if that flops, you look at that track and you'll end up going, well, what was even the point of me sitting down and wasting the hours I spent on it because I didn't like it, And you think, well, what is the point in this? And I think, at the level I'm sort of at, if you're not making it for you, then if you don't buy into it, then why would anyone else?
Yeah.
So it's kind of, and I think people see through that kind of writing it for playlists and stuff. I know that there are the big playlists, that everyone's aware of, and everyone's aware of this whole thing about there being lots of artists on there who've only ever released one song and they've written songs and else out. Everyone knows that goes on. Do you want to be in that category? Do you want to just make music? And if it does well, it does well. And if it doesn't, well, if you got something out of it, well, great, mission accomplished, on to the next one. I think you end up being... Yeah, I think the process makes you less precious about what other people think about it, because you have to, because if you've not got that thick skin, you're going to get too many knockbacks. I remember, the story that ties into this was I made a track called Daughters, which was about my two little girls, and not about them, in the sense of there's no lyrics to it, but I was thinking about them, and it was about how they made me feel. And I really loved that track. And then, I did the whole thing of self-released it. And so I did a lot of playlist pushing around, and one of the feedbacks I got was just, it was really nice, but I hated strings on it, and I was just like heartbroken because they were my favorite
strings
bit. And I was just heartbroken. And then literally the other day, my little daughter told me, I didn't even know she knew it was out there, but that she'd found it on Spotify, my youngest, and she loves it. And she's twigged that it's about her, and she's on the front cover, the front. And so I was like, that was the point.
And that's the goal, right?
That was what it was for. Yeah. That wasn't for me. It was for them. And and they've heard it and they like it, and it's kind of, that was then you think, oh, okay. It wasn't for that guy who didn't like the strings. He runs that playlist. Right. It was for them.
Oh, and those voices get so loud, right? Where you can, you search through history and we can come up with countless examples of you get two independent reviews. Let's just make up a scenario, but how often does it happen where like you said, if you submit a song to a playlist or whatever, and they, there are certain services out there where you can get a little bit of feedback from the people who are weeding through that stuff. And I don't think I'm fabricating this. I'm almost positive. It's been a while since I've been monitoring all that stuff really closely, but to get feedback from someone like, wow, I love that piano part in the middle that just, it feels like it just really ties the whole thing together. And then, the very next comment can be, I don't like this because that piano part in the middle just throws off the whole thing. And you could just take that at face value and be like, well, what the heck? How can I make, everybody happy? How can I win? And right. And at the end of, you have to just own the fact that if you try to please everybody, you're going to wind up pleasing nobody. Right.
Exactly.
Even, you mentioned her before, but even Taylor Swift, who I think is an incredible songwriter. I think she has dialed in her craft to a pristine level. And yet I know that there are people who don't appreciate her. I know that and is it now Taylor's goal to win over those people, or for her to stay true to her craft and to really treat well, the people who are following her, very, very rampantly, that are just all in, and for her to keep pouring into her craft and taking care of those folks who say yes to it. If you just want a fresh dose of perspective, just go look up the literary classics on Amazon and look at the 1-star reviews of the Grapes of Wrath or Moby Dick. Be like, it was boring. Be like, what planet do you live on? Oh my God. Too many. Oh, those whales.
Yeah.
What does PETA think of this book? Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It's my best story. My favorite story about that happened to me was I did a sort of slightly ambient version of Moonlight Sonata that I released last year. And I self-released it, and I sort of put it out on, the playlist pitching sites. And one of the bits of feedback I got was, really nice sound, but I didn't like the melody. The melody could have done a bit more. Could have been more movement in the melody for me. I'm like, dude, Beethoven wrote this. What are you talking about? This is one of the most famous pieces of music on earth.
Oh, That's such a perfect and like, all respect to the person who submitted the review, but yeah, like that is a great way to remind yourself like, oh right, like this, like I'm not going to put a smile on 100% of the people's faces on the planet. If that's my goal, I'm going to be really empty at the end of the run. Yeah.
There is no winning. You don't win. That's the thing. You don't win. You just survive. You just live to do it again the day after. And that's the point. And you only survive if you don't take that stuff too seriously and to heart, and I think, what you got to look at is the kind of the macro version of the patterns, is everybody saying exactly the same thing about this stuff? And if they are, have I got something wrong? Is something I'm missing there have I done something that actually, is universally hated? Universally wrong, and you look at the patterns there, and if enough people, and you look at the people who you trust as well, the people who you kind of, this person kind of knows what they're talking about, and you sort of think, if they're telling me something, should I listen? You learn the voices that you need to listen to and the voices that you can block out, and then you realise there were some of these guys, and there was playlist pitching sites, you're just after something from them, which is, put this on a playlist, mate. Just put it on a playlist, right? Does no harm, and they have their role, and their role is to protect those playlists because they guard that, and that's their thing, and they're those gatekeepers, and we all play a role in the game, ultimately, and this is the game. This is a zero-sum game where nobody wins.
It's very true. No,
that's life in a nutshell. So.
Andy, man, I don't want this to end. Not that it has to end right at this moment, but I love your perspective. I love your heart. It's great. Tell me a little bit more about, we had just started cracking this open right before we started recording the episode, but man, you are releasing, I didn't do a count, I lost count at some point, but you are putting out stuff left and right, not just as Andrew Lamb, but also as Bailrigg, with the incredible release that I was spinning earlier today that you released on Slow Echo and is available on All Ambient's website. But Gaslit Uplands is, just such a wonderful release, and I've just enjoyed every bit of that. But tell me about like what the release rate looks like for you. Like, was that a goal? Was that something that you were like trying to run after, or was it just a byproduct of your prolific nature? And I know that there's more monikers than I'm even aware of right now. So crack that one open with me a little bit.
Yeah. So it's not something I sort of shot for and went for and deliberately did, but I found that, as I kind of mentioned before, I have a full-time job, so I have a finite amount of time to make music. It's generally between the hours of 10 and midnight, when everyone else has gone to bed and the house is quiet and nobody demands anything else of me, that I can sort of sit down and do this, which is tough. You're often tired, sometimes you can't be bothered. But what it does do is it means I can't devote hours and hours and hours on end to sound design and tinkering and post-production and mix. What I've sort of learned very quickly to be was just ruthlessly efficient. I've got a little window of time. Mm-hmm. What can I make? What can I do in that little window of time? And if I'm sitting down with a blank canvas, I always aiming to have something that come the next day when I sit down at my desk again, there's something there that I can listen to and then think, well, what am I going to do next? Or do I like that? What would I change? And that sort of thing, to have something that you can take away from it. And that's kind of what I'm working on, the basis of always trying to do that. And then there are times when, so I think, as I was saying to you earlier, Mike, about I have to have everything set up so that literally just plug it, turn it on. And then because I don't have time to plug things in even, because every minute spent plugging in a little 2-hour window is a massive portion of the time you've got available. So setting things up is something that I try and avoid doing. I try and have everything ready to go. And I just ended up getting I guess I got good at being efficient and turning things around quickly and having something to show for it. And, not shooting for perfection, because it's a thing that it's an arbitrary concept anyway. My version of perfection is going to be different to someone's version of perfection. It's an unachievable concept, but also it's not something you need. The kind of music I make doesn't need to be perfect. And in many ways, particularly the ambient stuff, imperfection is almost what you're shooting for. If I make something, I'm always adding imperfections. By the time you've done it, and why do people run things through a cassette tape? They're looking for that tape warble, like that imperfection. That's part of the charm. So I'm lucky in the sense of a lot of the music I make doesn't need to be perfect, but you kind of get to this kind of that'll do mentality where you get to the point where that track has reached a threshold and that threshold is high enough and that's okay. And I can move forward. And I have quite a short attention span. So you kind of mentioned that. I obviously released music. Historically, I just, up until a few months ago, I just released it all as me. But because I like a lot of music, kind of quite cross-genre, it was getting a bit muddy and a bit clouded. And 1 minute, people like the piano stuff and not necessarily like the ambient stuff. And I also, I really like making electronic music as well. And so quite sort of deep progressive house stuff. And I wanted to make that. And again, it's like people who, I don't want to turn people off who think, well, I like the music, the piano stuff, but I don't listen to it, so I'm not going to listen to it. I want people to stick around because there's more out to come that they might like, And so I decided then to kind of start releasing things under different names. So that will still release as me, and that will probably still be mainly piano, neoclassical stuff. There's Bailrigg, as you mentioned, which is the ambient stuff, and then Library Fighter, which is, I've only got a couple of tracks out with Sunchild Records so far, which is the more I've been working on quite a bit of recently. And that gives me a new opportunity to work with. I've done some work with vocalists and stuff, which is something I've not done before. And that gives me a new sort of, that's given me new experiences and I really enjoy. And that's the kind of the head nodding, foot tapping stuff that's more like to bring a smile on your face. Whereas sometimes, I don't know how you feel, Mike, but sometimes when you're making ambient music and it can be very uplifting and positive, but it can be quite dark and it can be quite sincere and earnest. And I sometimes feel like, there's not a lot of fun involved, it's quite.
No, I mean, with you, like the music itself lends itself both to a side of being inspiring, but also there can be a very melancholy sort of lens to it all. And in a very intentional way, I think, but that also can seep into the subconscious, and for it to be sensitive to that, and to like it's one thing to work really strongly on a great kind of melancholic release, and it's another thing for me to then carry that attitude up to my wife and my children when I'm done recording for the day, and being like, why is Dad in such a grumpy mood? Be like, I was working on some ambient, that is not the attitude I want to find myself. So in light of what you said, I mean, it's almost like we need to call a spade, and maybe that means just sort of distancing yourself from it, or being able to remind it's an art piece, and being able to dissect from it a little bit, but it does also show just how much this stuff resonates with us, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think you're recognizing that,
absolutely. And I want with I've always liked that kind of music, and so to the more electric and upbeat stuff, and I wanted to have a crack at making it. And one of the most fun things I've done is I make some with my best mate as Brader, and the two of us work together on it, and we bounce stuff backwards and forwards, and we try and get together and do it when we can, and that's fun. That's the point of that. That is the main aim. And if other people like it and find it fun and enjoy it along the way, great. But we get a lot out of that. And if nobody else does, then, okay, we'll live with that, because we had fun. Yeah. And that's kind of partly an element of it. You've got to kind of enjoy what you're doing. And so, and I was finding that because of the way I work, and because I try to be very efficient, and like I think I said to you earlier, about I don't have time to sort of spend days tweaking every knob on a synth. I could do that, and find the perfect sound. I need to get a synth sound. I need to get one in the right ballpark fast. And even if it changes later, I need to get that in there to build that part, to build this thing, to create the layers. And sometimes I do feel maybe I rush stuff, and maybe, I think, if I was going to be critical of my own music, sometimes there isn't the variation in it that there would be if I spent a bit longer on it. But then again, I have fairly short attention span because I don't have a lot of time to do this. So I have to enjoy it. And I don't want to spend 3 weeks, where every night of those 2 hours, he's just working, tinkering that same truck again. Because I'll get bored. And then as soon as I get bored, then it'll turn out to be rubbish, or I'll lose interest in it and never finish it.
Well, then you're not releasing anything, right? Yeah, you get bored with it, and then you may just hang it up for good, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's an interesting spot to land where I'm with you, where like that balance of maybe investing 10% more, whatever that looks like maybe have, 1-2 hour session a week, or every 2 weeks, or every month, where you're kind of like looking back on stuff and, hey, I have a few extra minutes to giving yourself that permission. Yeah. Maybe if it brings another level of polish, but also, I mean, like you said, I think there are plenty of people who will tinker so long that they actually wind up talking themselves out of ever putting it out into the world. And that is a far worse problem to have, I think, than to, like you said, to perhaps release something and then to listen back on and be like, I wish I could have maybe had a little more time to tinker with. Like, I hear you on that. but you did release it. And that's far ahead of the game from where a lot of people, unfortunately, find themselves landing. And
absolutely.
So
you're right. Yeah. And you're right, because when you're tinkering forever, you're shooting for an unachievable aim, which is perfection, and it doesn't exist. There'll always be more you can do. There's always so much, because it's not a yes, no answer. It's not a black and white thing. It's a subjective thing anyway. So what is perfection? How can you define perfection of something that you just created in your head that never existed before? You can't do it. So you do have to put yourself under pressure and come to an end point somewhere. I'd probably bring that end point forward sooner than most do. But what I tend to do is I'll make something and then I'll just sit on it and then just forget about it and go off and make something else. And then I'll come back to it maybe a month, 2 months later, and I'll be listening through stuff and go, oh, okay, actually, if I just changed a couple of bits, that might be good to go, and then I've got some stuff coming out actually in next year with Big Ern Togetti about, which is it's stuff that some of it's 2 years old. And I just sat on it and thought, I didn't know where it fit, or maybe it wasn't quite ready, or something needed to be changed, or whatever it was. And I was just listening through stuff and thought, if I just changed X, Y, and Z, or packaged it together with this song, then it works. It sits there, it got home, So that's kind of coming, And then I've got, just quite a few Bailrigg releases lined up. I've got a lot lined up to us between now and next summer. So
I cannot wait
trying to fill the second half of the year at the minute, next year. So it's a short attention span, mate. That's what does it. Short attention span.
Yeah. Well, the way that you've translated it into a prolific nature, that's a great problem to have.
Thank you, man.
For sure.
Thank you.
My goodness. Well, hey, I want to respect your time for sure. But I think this is probably the best problem to have, is that I feel like we're just getting started. I feel like we could go for quite a while. And I've said this, I don't want this to come across as something that I feel the need to say, but I genuinely feel that this just warrants a part 2 at some point in life. I think we need to go back and crack it back open and continue to explore. Because I honestly, Andy, you are modeling something great for a lot of people, and to continue to take those steps in the direction you are, it's just nothing short of inspiring. So please continue making what you do, and we will part 2 this sometime in the future.
I love that.
I'm really grateful that we got the chance to share this time together. Thank you for sharing everything you did. And
it's been brilliant, mate. I was, like I said at the start, I've been a big fan of yours for ages. So it's lovely to meet you and chat to you. So it's been great, with getting into releasing with Slow Echo and with Ben and everybody and Marshall. It's talking with those guys and meeting those guys again. You just talk of that sort of thing we said before. Everything you meet, it's just lovely. It's nice. It's great. I've not met a bad egg along this journey yet. It's great. So long way to continue.
The creator community is a beautiful thing. And I hope it continues to grow, not only in number, but also in the health of everyone involved, the approach, the health, the life in everyone, for sure. And I'm thrilled to be a part of that with you, Andy. This has just been awesome. It's been great.
Yeah, I've loved it, mate. Thank you.
Looking forward to part 2 already.
I can't wait. Yeah, same time next week?
Exactly. There it is. Thanks, Andy. Thank you again for listening to the All Ambient podcast. Music throughout today's episode was all from the catalog of Bailrigg. And you can find all of this music along with a bunch of other incredible songs, bundles, and other resources from an amazing group of composers and producers at all-ambient.com. And be sure to use the promo code podcast25. That's podcast25. And you'll get 25% off of any product at all-ambient.com. It's a great opportunity to save even more on an incredible resource for your next film, video, or project. Don't wait for another second. Head over to allambient.com and use promo code podcast25. Again, that's podcast25 to get 25% off of your next purchase. Make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so you can catch every conversation we have with all these incredible people who share the same passion. I'm looking forward to the next time. I hope that you are too. Can't wait to see you then. And until then, have an incredible day. Here's hoping that this music and the heart behind it makes your day and life that much better. See you next time.